What's up, everybody? Welcome to the very first episode of a podcast that I'm starting here with Jose and Mr. Andres. I'll leave the floor for them to introduce themselves. The name of the podcast is Fitness Uncovered, meaning we'll spill the beans on everything that is training related and what we perceive as the truth in this matter, in this field that has a lot of information that may be contradictory. Yes. So take the floor.
A lot.
Yep.
A lot.
Well, introduce yourself first. Who are you?
Oh, me first?
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Nick Barbosa. I am a trainer here in South Florida. I am 20 years old, maybe believe it or not. A lot of people like to disqualify me because of that, but given I am here joined by these two more knowledgeable, older, with more wisdom people than me, I think that I have learned a lot from them. Specifically, the guy sitting to my left is my coach, also my mentor, Mr. Jose. And I've been a coach for about 3 years now. I've been training in the gym for about 8 years now. I started when I was around 13, right when I got to high school. And I think over the time I've accumulated, a decent amount of knowledge on training. So, and then eventually I just started training people. It kind of happened to me. I didn't really choose to do that. It just kind of came into my path. People started asking me questions. And then from then on, I started answering them, and then people started asking me to coach them, and that's kind of how I got into the field. So, it kind of came to me, and it's, my main profession now. I'm in school for it now at University of Miami. So, and that's
what are you
where I am
studying?
Right now. Exercise physiology, University of Miami. Yeah.
Awesome.
So, undergrad still, given my age, but yep.
So, if I may ask, what kind of clientele do you want to target? Like, if ideally, if you could choose any.
I actually think I like what's going on with me now. I tend to gear towards more the younger crowd, the like teenagers, because that's where I was not too long ago. That's that's who I was. I was just that lost teenage guy in the gym who just wants to grow some muscle. I actually started training because I wanted to look like Wolverine, and so I just wanted the big pecs, the back, and
you're achieving it. I think you kind of look like
really.
Him. Yeah, this guy got your hair longer, more beard, and
when I was 15, I remember looking up like Hugh Jackman's deadlift in PR, and I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna hit that. I think it was like 435, and I think when I hit it, I was like super happy. I'm like from Wolverine now and stuff like that. But yeah, that has led me down the path of training, and I think the younger crowd is mostly what appeals to me. Mm-hmm. Not only the guys that want to look bigger and get stronger, but as well as like younger athletes that are trying to achieve their performance goals. And like I've trained a lot of the high school football players, gymnasts, Olympic lifting, powerlifting, all the strength athletes too. So, yeah.
Are you still open to older?
Yeah,
adults?
I'm open.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I've done.
Because I think you have a lot to offer, not just teenagers.
No, absolutely. But I mean, when you ask me like that exactly what's going on now, that's because that was me not so long ago, and I understand more what they're going through than someone that's older, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what would you say, in your opinion, is the missing factor in most people's program? Most people's training regimen, let's call it. It's not a program, because some people don't have programs.
Oh, are we assuming that they do the program?
That's why I said training regimen.
Assuming that they do everything that you tell them to do.
Right.
And you wrote down for them. Yeah.
So yeah. Well,
assuming that they do those things?
Assuming that they do it.
Mobility.
Yeah.
That's how we all, I guess, got together in terms of doing this.
I think we all have the same answer for that.
FRS system, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Shout out again.
Another plug. Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
I shall give the floor to one of you now, Mr. Jose.
My name is Jose Colon. I'm also a trainer here in South Florida. From Puerto Rico. Moved here when I was 13, so I'm 31 now.
Damn.
Yeah. Started
3 decades, man.
Yeah. Started my training journey when I was 16 years old. Became a trainer at 19, so I'm 12 years into this industry, as you guys know.
Have you reached the 10,000 hours, you think, yet?
I think so.
You know what they say about that?
Yeah. I think so.
I have not.
And
Me certainly not.
started my first job was in LA Fitness. LA Fitness, just like you, Andres.
Yeah.
Making $6, 30 minutes.
I mean, to
1980s,
my 1980s inflation, that's not that bad.
Yeah, and
How did you like LA Fitness, by the way? And you started, were you a coach at LA Fitness straight away? That was the first thing?
I was a personal trainer. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I got my certification in NASM and then immediately applied to places. LA Fitness was the first one to call me. Got the job. First paycheck was $6.
You work 1 hour?
30 minutes.
30 minutes.
No. It's LA Fitness at the time. I don't know how things are now. Was commission based,
Mhm.
so you didn't make any money unless you train people. So
Yep.
I will be there for 3 to 4 hours a day because I was going to school full time. By the way, I graduated from FIU with a nutritional science background. Have a bachelor's on that. So when I was studying for school, I was working at LA Fitness, and I would do my homework there in LA Fitness, talk to people, start engaging with members. I was a very shy guy. This is another great thing about this business, that it's pushed me to get more into the networking side, because I'm perfectly fine not talking to anybody. Super happy. But this job has pushed me to get better at communicating and meeting people and stuff like that. So yeah, study there, train people for free. That's what I did, train people for free. I was like, if I'm here, might as well just take advantage. So that's how I got my practice in there, experience, little by little. Second paycheck was $12.
Hey,
Third paycheck was 36. I have them here in my
Look at you now.
like right here.
they're doubling.
Fourth 52, fifth 102,
Hey,
and I kept piling the checks until it was over 300. My manager at the time, he was like, "Bro, are you ever gonna pick up your checks?" I was like, "For what?" They're $12. I'm just letting it pile up until it's like an actual, good number. I wasn't even making, minimum wage. You get what I'm saying? And I was working like I was there for a good 20 hours a week, at least.
yeah.
Yeah. And then eventually I got to the point that I had like over 30 clients, to the point that I had to quit because it was taking time away from school. So I quit, and then I started freelancing myself until I graduated college. When I graduated college, I went to the Y, started at 22, and worked at the Y for many years, for 6-7 years or something like that.
Yeah, which is where we met, by the way.
This is
Yeah.
where I met Nick.
Yeah.
This is where I actually met Andres as well, when Andres used to work out there, and Nick
Yeah.
as well. And then from there, the pandemic happened. Well, and then I was working at the Y, working at 45 as well, doing some freelance. Started my online business as well with online coaching. And little by little, I've been growing my business. The pandemic hit, and I was like, I am not gonna not have a job. I need to have a job. Started training people through Zoom. Started
Oh, yeah.
getting more clients online because now the gyms were closed. I built a gym in my house, so I have a nice gym garage. That's where I'm at now. Training
Sounds
people in my
sweet.
garage gym, and I have my online business.
That sounds sweet.
Yeah.
I need to get my own gym.
It's the best thing ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get on
Best
it,
thing
dude.
ever.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, for
It
sure.
gives you so
Great.
much freedom.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
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 I've had the best training programs, workouts that I've ever had. I don't have to wait for anybody. I can program it however I want, So
And you know the layout.
and I know the layout. Don't have to walk that far. So
Nice.
yeah.
Question for you. If you were to study anything else, what do you think it would have been?
I would have done exercise physiology, and I would have gone into the physical therapy realm
Interesting.
and become a doctor of physical therapy.
That's an awesome title. I want that doctor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. From coach to doctor.
But I like where I'm at now.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
if I were to do it all over again, I think it's when I
Yeah.
started. It was 2009. The fitness wasn't that big yet. It was more like bodybuilding.
Mm-hmm.
That was all the information that you would know.
Mm-hmm.
So I just got into nutrition. So I was like, I'm going to become a personal trainer, become a nutritionist, so I can help people the best that I can.
Right.
Did you like
Yeah.
it? Did you like going to college for that?
I did not like going to college for nutrition because I did not learn anything that I apply right now with my clients. It was more clinical stuff, working in the hospital,
Yeah.
basically teaching learning how to feed a person through the tube, through
Mhm.
through the neck or
IV or
their intestines.
Was it worth it?
catheterization and stuff.
It was worth it in the sense of credibility, and also I made my mother proud.
Mm-hmm.
And so credibility basically, because I have the knowledge of nutrition, plus I have the bachelor's degree, so people get to believe me a little bit more
It's
when I
easier
talk.
to get people in the
Yeah,
door.
get people to buy into what you're talking about.
Mhm.
So it helped in those terms. But in
Right.
terms of my business and just
Like
getting
actual
more-
applicable advice and information.
applicable advice from the people that I work with. No, not really. Yeah.
Would you not go if you could change that in your past right now?
100%.
You would not go.
I would have still done college though,
Okay, just not
Yeah.
for nutrition.
just not for nutrition.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that college teaches you a lot of things, like working with people that you don't know, public speaking, doing things that you don't want to do.
Right.
Kind of like trains you to do tasks that you hate.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Get into the studying habits, especially for us trainers, learning how to read research papers.
That's very important.
You know,
Well,
like if
episode
you don't
on that.
understand the concepts of a research paper, or the words that they say, like the means and the
Especially when it
logistics
comes to
and-
nutrition,
yeah,
because nutrition research is very hard to do.
yeah, like you learn those things. You learn how to write your own research papers as well. You learn how to find out the limitations, how to read the limitations of a study, the pros and cons of a study, things like that. Like that, the normal population that doesn't go to school or doesn't study
Mhm.
these concepts, they're not gonna get it. They're just gonna listen to someone say, "Oh, weight training is bad for you. You're gonna get hurt," or and they're like, "Okay, got it," or like, or vegan is better than
Carnivore.
carnivore. You're like, okay,
Don't listen to
okay,
Netflix.
got it. Yeah.
Oh,
So
good boy.
so definitely college just you can get to network as well. You get to
absolutely.
meet a lot of people.
that's a huge
So
thing, for sure.
I'm not saying that college is for everyone. It wasn't for me. I hated college, but it definitely doesn't teach you how to have a better business in the sense of financial gain and stuff like that. But it teaches you great lessons for you to take, you know.
Learning is for everybody.
Learning is for
College
everybody,
might not
yeah.
be for everybody.
Yeah.
But yes, learning is
So-
for everybody. No?
That's basically
Awesome.
that's what I do.
Cool.
All right, I'll go then. My name is Andres Corrales. I am also local here to South Florida. I am also a coach. And like we already said, we are all mobility specialists as well as strength coaches.
Yeah. Mhm.
I started my coaching career, I guess, or coaching journey, also in LA Fitness, but I started in the sales.
So you're a manager.
Yes. Well, first they call it personal training counselor. That's
Okay.
what they call it. But I like to think that I talk pretty well, and I'm a good salesman. So I moved up pretty quickly. So I ended up being director within 2 months, running my own personal training division in an LA Fitness, which actually it taught me a lot. And I'm glad that that's where I started, because I think that that's where a lot of coaches and trainers lack in being able to close somebody that's sitting in front of you,
Mhm.
at being confident in presenting prices and presenting your service and you know, having the ability to like present the value and the need and the demand for it.
Mm-hmm.
So it taught me a lot about that, and it also taught me a lot about business, in, like, you know, money coming in versus loss, and people that are falling off, etc. Keeping, if you have trainers under you, keeping them accountable, things like that. Overseeing training programs that aren't your clients and things like that. So there were a lot of things that I learned, but I quickly grew tired of it. I just wasn't like, I liked the training part, and I was also like
you go.
learning a lot. I was getting certifications, you know, and I wasn't able to put those things into application because I was running people through assessments and barely even running people through assessments, because that's not what they would want us to do. They would kind of just want us to run people through a hard workout so that we could sell it. An assessment is harder to sell than a hard workout, because people don't understand what an assessment is. And I think that, I mean, every workout,
And they don't want to be told what's wrong with them.
right, exactly. They just want to work hard. They just want to show
Sweat.
up and sweat.
Yeah.
So that was my first experience, which so I demoted myself actually after a while. I didn't want to be, I was not working in a big club, so my bonuses were not huge, and my hours were terrible. I was working 9 to 9 every single day. And I was working in Hollywood, so I had a 3-hour break in the middle, but it was far and I wanted to work out, so I would end up most days just eating, working out, and then going back to work. So it took up a lot of time. So when my wife got pregnant, I didn't want to be working 9 to 9 anymore. So I demoted myself. The trainer schedule was a lot more flexible. I don't know if when you were there, but I could create my own hours,
Yeah.
and my availability was all up to me.
Yeah.
I would communicate with my clients when they would be coming in. Nobody had control of that except for me, and maybe if I got a new client, the manager would put it in for me. I did start butting heads because of what they demanded me to do. So some of the problems that I feel like I ran into is because there's a difference between the sales team and the actual trainers. The sales team might promise things that now when I get that client, I have to be like, all right, well, even though they told you we're going to be working out 7 days a week, you have a program for 4 sessions a month that are 30 minutes, like you said. So I'm not going to be writing you a program for 7 days a week. And that would obviously be like, wait, but that's why I purchased it, because
Right.
this person told me that you were going to be writing me a program. And it's like, well, you never worked out before. You don't know how to squat. So if I want you to squat 3 days a week and you're only going to be with me one of those days, how do I know that you're not going to hurt yourself? It's
Right.
a liability issue.
Yeah.
So I quit also. I quit LA Fitness, and then I went off on my own. I started working with a chiropractor, renting out his gym. He had a squat rack and a leg press and some dumbbells and a Smith machine and a reverse hyper. So he had like some essentials, some bands and things like that. And obviously he had people that were in pain that were going to him, patients that I could have access to, not access to like as if they were getting a treatment session. I would be like, hey, you want to come train with me? But he would recommend it, and they would also see that I was training people there, so they would ask about it. It was good. It was my first experience of what a good healthcare communication system can look like, where you have two different practices working together. And I do think that in those practices, like chiropractic practices and massage therapists and even physical therapists, a strength coach is super valuable to have, on staff or just available as communication. So I did that for a while, and that's actually when I reached out to you and you put me in contact with F45 because it was hard to get clients on my own.
Yeah.
It's really easy when you're in LA Fitness and you're a company that's investing millions of dollars in advertising, and you have a pool of members available to you every single day. It's really easy to get a client. But when you're just working off the streets as a personal trainer, coach, it's a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, it's
and back
harder.
then,
Plus you live far from Hollywood, Florida.
Right.
Like you were about 30 minutes away.
exactly. So I
So
couldn't.
you
make my
couldn't
local
take the
people.
clients with you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, it took a little bit of a buffering time, but I was able to kind of get 7 clients that I was would keep me afloat, and the F45. So there was a lot of experience. Then the pandemic hit, and when the pandemic hit, I actually think that my training career changed for the better a lot, because it forced me to rethink what I wanted to do with my coaching career. So my first thought process when the pandemic hit, because obviously F45 closed down and everything closed, I wasn't even able to train my 7 one-on-one clients that I had at that time. So I decided to spend that time in education. I went back to school. I decided to go back and do physical therapy. On top of that, I had already been looking into FRC and using the FRC system, but I wasn't certified, so I decided to get certified right when the pandemic hit. Again, that changed my life in a lot of ways. Also got me a job in the gym that I took the certification in. In that gym, next level, in that gym, I got to experience firsthand what it's like to really have a bridge between therapy and rehabilitation and back to sport training. And I think that to the question that I asked you, one of the things that's missing in the industry is that transition process of like when somebody gets injured. I think that we rely a lot on insurance, and there's this whole phrase that is return to prior level of function. I talk about this a lot with my clients, that I don't like that phrase. Because by definition, the prior level of function was not sufficient to mitigate the injury or to prevent it in the first place, whatever word you might want to use. We can definitely talk about why injury prevention is not something that is possible, but getting off topic there. So I got to experience that. There was a physical therapist on staff. So there was he had patients that we would eventually transition back into strength training. And also it was a physical therapist that was a strength coach. So it's very different communicating with somebody that understands both sides of the equation than somebody that's just, biased into the physical therapy field. Right after I got that job, I decided I applied to college to go back and study physical therapy assistant and get a degree in that. I learned very few things. I'm exaggerating. I learned a lot. I think that there's a lot in the curriculum that still needs to be updated. I think that there's a lot new practices that are more effective and more sound. Especially when it comes to mobility, again, especially when it comes to the way that we train. I think that there's a bias when it comes to physical therapy, where I hear a lot of physical therapists saying things like, people shouldn't squat, people shouldn't deadlift heavy, people shouldn't do this, people shouldn't do that. And I think that bias mainly comes from lack of education. Usually physical therapists are not strength coaches, and usually they're not deadlifting and squatting themselves. So it's hard for somebody that's never done it to understand why it's so effective and important. And also, if you're a physical therapist, you're only being exposed to people that are injured or something happened. You're not exposed to the person that has been deadlifting properly and squatting properly and working on mobility, or at least not as much. You might meet that person, by chance, but most physical therapists are not, meeting people like that every day. And on top of that, if I was a physical therapist and I have a patient in front of me that is asking me if they should deadlift or not, and I have zero idea what their deadlift looks like, I have zero idea what their capacity looks like, I have zero idea if they have a trainer, I don't know any trainers that I could recommend myself, I might tell that person not to do that. Right? So what I loved about training in that gym is that I saw that missing factor of coaches that could benefit from understanding rehabilitation more, and from therapists that could benefit from understanding strength training more. So I saw this need for a bridge from between the two practices, and that's what I went for. So I went back to school to study physical therapy, especially because FRC taught me so much about it. I just thought that being more, again, having more credibility in that field and being exposed to more challenging things, because as a coach, you're not going to be exposed to the same things that you're going to be exposed to as a physical therapist,
Right.
Pails and rails for somebody that had a knee replacement is extremely effective. And research shows that, after you have a knee replacement or something like that, it's very unlikely that you regain full range of motion. But I've had a lot of success with the type of training system that we use with the FRS system. And again, so that's kind of where I'm at now, just trying to build. Now I'm trying to build an online presence more, because as I've mentioned, most of my experience, actually all of my experience, has been training one-on-one, or at least in-person training, whether it's group or one-on-one. And I've had very little experience online coaching. But I'm running out of hours in the day. So
Yeah.
I got a
recurring problem.
I got a couple questions for you.
yeah, go ahead.
Are you going for the doctor of physical therapy?
I think I'm going to take it step by step. I think I
Okay.
want to do a master's in athletic coaching.
Okay.
And after that, I will make a decision based on where I'm at, because I think that also what I would like to do is I went to study physical therapy not because I wanted to be a physical therapist, but because I wanted to be a better coach. So I never want to stop coaching. I like coaching more than I like administering.
So you're doing it more for the knowledge gain.
Right.
Yeah.
And
And credibility.
and credibility.
purposes.
What I would love to have and be the owner of is a clinic that is a gym. So as a physical therapist assistant, I can own a gym and hire a doctor to supervise the physical therapy side, while I can still be, owning that gym for myself. So that's what I would love to do. I would love to have that, to kind of recreate that experience that I was exposed to, where under the same roof you have a physical therapist, a strength coach, and even maybe a nutritionist, or
Yeah.
a whole
Complete
system.
Facility.
System, yeah, facility. That will, you can get everything
Exactly.
there. Yeah.
Exactly.
Second question: with what you learn in the FRS system, has that helped you understand the concepts that they teach you in school more?
Of course. I
So-
mean,
so like, no, for real. Like when you go to, like when you read on a book, and now you're reading whatever concept you're reading, you're like, I already knew this,
yeah. So,
and probably
Otherwise-
more because you're saying that the texts are kind of outdated.
oh yes.
And now you're like, we don't do this anymore.
No.
This is
No.
what you're supposed to be doing. This book is
Absolutely.
wrong.
And I had this conversation with Nick
Yep.
last time that we met. That in the beginning of the curriculum, there were certain things that I challenged, and I just stopped wasting my time
Yeah,
on it
yeah.
afterwards.
Yeah.
Um,
I did that in nutrition too.
yeah.
I became the student that never talked, never asked questions.
Yeah.
It's no point.
Yeah.
There's no point.
Yeah. But yes, in terms of understanding concepts, especially when it comes to anatomy and especially when it comes to movement, because looking at my peers, one of the things that they had a super, super hard time understanding, and it's because of the way that they taught it, is the difference between like eccentric movement and concentric movement, which to me is super easy.
Yeah.
But the way that they, for some reason, the way that they taught it is that a concentric movement is going against gravity and an eccentric movement is going with gravity, which doesn't always apply. Technically, yes, it does. But if there's a pulley, it starts confusing people because
Right,
that
yeah, 'cause
tricep
if
extension.
you're
Yeah.
going up,
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So the way that I explain it is if the muscle is lengthening, it's an eccentric.
Yeah.
And if the muscle is shortening, it's a concentric. So
Yeah.
it just things like that where the way that it's taught seems almost like it's trying to fit this. They're trying to simplify it because, or maybe even overcomplicate it in some areas. But the biggest thing that it helped me understand was exercise selection and progression, and understanding that there's not a library of exercises that I need to pick from to train a tissue. And it's so much easier to rehab people understanding the FRS system if somebody had or like right now, since he's not even a patient, he's a client, had a labrum tear, a slap labrum tear, which is superior, anterior to lateral, and posterior. So it's basically like it's a shoulder, a labrum tear, and it's one of the worst cases of labrum tear that you can have. And if you don't understand how to train tissue, meaning the differences between skeletal tissue, connective tissue,
Muscular
joints,
tissue.
everything, then you're going to be stuck doing shoulder flexion, shoulder abduction, external rotation, internal
It's limiting.
rotation. Right. And
Yeah.
full range of motion stuff. So like what I see in clinics is whenever people have that kind of stuff, that's what they do. They do finger ladders for shoulder flexion. They'll do like dowel assisted exercises for shoulder abduction. They'll do just anatomy exercises. What does the shoulder do? We're going to train those movements. They don't think about what does the tissue do.
Yeah.
So I think that understanding specifically when it comes to exercise, therapeutic exercise, FRS was above and beyond what I don't know of any physical therapy curriculum, but super, super thorough, and it helped me understand things to a level that you're just way beyond anything that they're teaching in the curriculum, at least in my experience,
Yeah.
in the curriculum that I was in. So if that answered your question,
Yeah.
I don't know.
So I'm gonna ask the same question that I asked Jose with a little bit of a twist. Talking exclusively about curriculum and the knowledge that you gained from school, was it worth it?
I went to a private university, so no, in a private university. But if you went to a public university, it may be so for the amount of money that I paid, no.
Okay. I
Um,
see what you mean.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But do I think that it helped? Yes. Especially when it comes to management of pain and understanding when it is appropriate to do things and when it's not. When it is okay to feel pain and when it's not. What is contradictory? What are contraindications for certain people that have certain conditions? Being able to provide a better service for somebody that comes into you and you're training them and they tell you I have osteoarthritis. Understanding deeply what that means and how to train that so that you can try to push back the effects of that condition. You know, so understanding pathology. I think that that's the biggest thing that it gave me, because exercise, I think that they don't do a really good job with teaching exercise and exercise progressions. I think that they kind of skim over that. And they focus a lot on modalities, which again, understanding modalities when I talk about modalities in physical therapy, I'm not talking about training modalities. I'm talking about electrical stimulation, ultrasound, massage therapy, that type of stuff. So being exposed to that kind of stuff is also super useful because while I always say that those things are incomplete, like if people are like, oh, I need a massage, like, no, what you need is probably to move a little bit more. But a massage could also help you move better. So like tools can be used
to supplement
what
you
exactly
need
right.
primarily.
So also feeling more confident when there's a really difficult person in front of me. So like the very first patient that I trained that had Parkinson's, I was super scared to train them. I was or treat them in that case. I was super scared to treat them because I have to be walking with them with a walking belt. There's so much responsibility on you. But you start understanding, like, you know, when things are happening, what are normal patterns, you know, like especially with that example of Parkinson's, you have that like steppage gait. So like sometimes it may seem like they're about to fall, but like it's just the way that they're walking. It also taught me a lot about how resilient the body is. Because I think a lot of times before I went to school for physical therapy, as soon as something hurt or like if somebody felt a little bit uncomfortable, or if I was trying to stretch somebody, or if I was doing like manual work with somebody in FRC, like I was super careful. And I was like, I don't want to push too hard, but the body is resilient. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, like in physical therapy, during my clinicals, I remember this specific person that like was really, really, really bad patient. And she had just gotten out of her second knee replacement. Wow. And she didn't want to do any of the exercises. She was also a workers' comp, which are the worst type of patients. And she didn't want to do anything. So it was 6 months post-surgery. And I don't know if you guys know about specific ranges, but she had only increased her knee flexion about 20 degrees, which is nothing.
That's like
nothing. That's like you can't go up the stairs if you have 20 degrees of knee flexion. And 6 months post-surgery, that's way past the window of time of that elasticity of that tendon to get back to what it's. So her full range of motion, she will never get back, type of thing. So we would have to do really intense manipulations of that joint to the point where she would be crying in pain, begging us to stop. But in order for us to justify physical therapy to insurance, we need to do something. We can't just, you tell me to stop, okay, we didn't do anything, you can go home, and then I charge you for a physical therapy session. We can't do that. So it has to be a justification. Yeah. So sometimes, you know, you do have to, like, as long as it's appropriate, again, you have to understand what you're doing. But being more confident in those scenarios where, like, the other week, there was a client that walked into our group training facility, and he had a below knee amputation. And nobody knew what to do. But I was just like, let me just take care of him, right? And, you know, obviously, like, that's not what you want to do for every group training session, because I basically had to write a complete new program. But having that experience, I was able to do that on the spot. Mm-hmm. You know, like, let's just completely change. Obviously, he didn't do any of the exercises that were in the program, but I was able to feel confident that, like, I'm not putting this person at risk. Whereas without that exposure, and I don't know if it was more so the curriculum that made me feel more confident, or the clinicals. The clinical rotations, actually working with people in physical therapy, was probably the best part of going to school, and what I would say was the most worth it, is actually being able to work with people.
Would you change the facility that you attended school for because of the cost? Like, would you think what
if I would have
yes
I would.
Exclusively because of the cost.
Exclusively because of the cost, but I will also say that during my clinicals, I met students from other universities. Again, I'm biased. I have a lot more experience coming into it, especially with exercise and the FRS system and understanding anatomy and physiology and all of that. And I'm passionate in this, and I see that a lot of people don't share that passion. Like, I would hate it, and I would get, my pet peeve is when especially in a healthcare profession, when a student will ask, is this going to be on the test? It's ridiculous. But that's what I'm saying. Like, not everybody's as passionate as we are, and as eager to learn every little bit. So I did meet other students that were coming from other or other universities, other whatever, that were not as prepared as I thought my peers were. So they did do a good job. By the way, I went to Kaiser University. They did do a good job in terms of preparing you for clinicals. But I'm sure that there are other places that do a good job as well and don't cost private university
Yeah.
amount.
Yeah.
You know?
The last question for you: you currently work at a place as a physical therapy assistant, right?
So I took my licensing test 2 months ago and passed. I still need to take my laws and regulations test.
Oh, okay. So okay.
So I'm not fully licensed yet. I'm just putting it off because rules and laws are really boring to study.
No, because I was gonna ask you the question: if you were working at a place,
Mhm.
and when you do start working at a place, we'll get back to this question. I want to see how receptive they are to the information that you learn in the FRS system when you treat your patients.
Especially coming from a young guy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can
Yeah.
answer that question with my clinical experience, with my clinical rotation experience. I was in 4 different locations for clinical experience, and they want you to go through different locations so that they have different specialties. There are some locations that have a system that's very specific. So it depends a lot on the physical therapist. Like this physical therapist can give you a plan of care that's very specific to where they give you the exercises that they want you doing, or there's a physical therapist that can just give you exercise that you need to strengthen the hip flexors and you need to do
like a template. type
yeah
of thing.
right, like I just want you to do these things however you want to do them, you can do them. So
Okay.
obviously I prefer that type of setting because then I
Yeah.
can actually use my
Your knowledge.
knowledge and again going back to the I love the programming part of it, I like that. But there's both. So to answer your question, there's both. It depends on where you're working, but there are, in my experience of the 4 places that I worked at, the places that were most receptive were the doctors that were younger.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I mean, I think that goes without saying as to why that is.
I think there's a discontinuation of the older crowd to continue to learning
And
new
also
information.
just people, the longer you've been doing something a certain way, the harder it is going to be to
Yeah,
change
you
your
don't want
mind.
a younger guy telling you what to do.
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. So my
that
first
makes sense.
my first clinical rotation was at an orthopedic clinic that specifically shared us the building with an orthopedic surgeon that specialized in hip and knee replacements, which is why I worked with knee replacements and hip replacements so much. And they allowed me to do everything I wanted to do. I taught them Pails and Rails and all of that stuff, and they to
That's
this
awesome.
day now have it in their system.
Wow.
because I'm pretty sure you came to them with the actual like information
Mhm.
and the research about it.
Right.
Because like what we're talking about is not something that it was made up. It's actually in the research.
Exactly.
It's just not called Pails and Rails.
Right.
It's just
It's
called
it's
it's just
also-
called isometric training.
Exactly.
it's research that's already done,
Yeah,
right?
it's much as
Like,
already done.
Even
Like,
cars.
it's-
Even
yeah,
cars.
it's just a
Yeah,
different like
cars, yeah.
interpretation of the research that has been done a
Right.
few years ago already.
Decades.
Yeah, right.
That the isometric training, has been done since the 1960s, I believe, something like that.
Yeah.
So the studies of isometric training. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's another place that I worked at. The doctor was a lot older, and he's been working for over 30 years, and he has a hip strengthening program. He has a shoulder strengthening program, and it almost doesn't matter what your condition is in terms of exercise. If you have a shoulder issue, this is what you're going to be doing. What changes
Equation.
is the modalities, right?
Yeah, they have an equation for specific.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Instead of really, diving deep, it's just like, but at the same time, it also depends on what type of structure they have. So how many patients are they seeing at a specific time, and what type of patient are they seeing? Because if it's a sports clinic, then you could be like super specific and stuff like that. But if it's like what I saw at neuro places is that it's a lot of like Parkinson's patients and stroke patients and post-polio and things like that. That
it's really just getting them to move
It's
and
just-
learning how to
exactly.
use their
Right.
limbs and stuff like that.
right.
Yeah.
That's like the train of thought that me and you have talked about before. It's like maybe you don't know exactly what the issue is, but you may know what they need, despite you not knowing exactly what the issue is.
And by the way, just to be politically correct, I meant to say people with Parkinson's and people with neurological problems, not
What-
Parkinson's patients. Just
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No, what was the question again?
No,
Oh,
it
sorry.
was just that like with the FRS system, it fits
Yeah.
into so many models of so many different modalities and
Oh, yeah.
problems that like
Yeah.
you don't sometimes you don't you just kind of know that the person needs is movement
Yeah.
Mhm.
despite
Yeah.
you don't know exactly what the issue could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, exactly. So yeah,
So those were our intros. A little bit more long-winded from Andres, but that we like that. That's good.
thank you.
Yeah. Enjoy the episode 1 of Fitness Uncovered.